Happening now, George Zimmerman's acquittal, raising civil rights issues to the top of the nation's agenda. Dr. Martin Luther King's daughter, Dr. Bernice King, she's here in the Situation Room with me. Zimmerman himself is staying out of sight, at least for now. We're taking a closer look at what his future may hold, plus a bizarre offshoot of the Asiana plane crash. You're in the Situation Room. The George Zimmerman murder case ignited fierce debates about the state of race in the United States long before the not guilty verdict came down Saturday night. Now many are asking what all of this means for the future of the civil rights movement in this country. Our Mary Snow is working that part of the story for us. She's got some more information. Mary, what are you seeing?
Well, Wolf, members of the Congressional Black Caucus gathered here in New York today to discuss moving forward after the verdict. And they say instead of seeing the verdict as a setback, they view it as a way to hit the reset button. And they're calling for a real conversation about race and the criminal justice system. From the nation's capital to cities across the country, voices were raised.
Not one more!
Along with outrage, a message to send after a jury acquits George Zimmerman.
This is what democracy looks like!
The verdict isn't ending the debate. Rather, it's forcing a nationwide conversation about race and the justice system.
I view this decision as an opportunity to hit the reset button and for America to have a real conversation about the intersection between race, the criminal justice system, and how and whether young black men are treated differently on account of their color.
New York Congressman Hakeem Jeffries joined other members of the Congressional Black Caucus calling on the Department of Justice to consider federal civil rights charges against Zimmerman.
At least in my view, George Zimmerman identified Trayvon Martin as a potential criminal because he was black.
Hundreds of thousands of people have signed online petitions asking the Department of Justice to act. The Reverend Al Sharpton says demonstrations demanding federal action are planned in 100 cities on Saturday. Zimmerman's lawyers have said race was not a factor. But some members of Congress see the widespread protests as evidence of why they need to fight harder.
We got a lot of work to do. You know, a lot of individuals thought that once President Obama was elected, we lived in a post-racial America. Well, those of us in Congress and those of us that are in the streets really knew that that's not the case. And unfortunately, it lets us know that we've got a long way to go.
Not guilty.
But this case, they say, has strengthened their resolve. And Wolf, lawmakers who gathered today say the first place they plan to hold conversations about race in America is in Congress and reevaluate some of the laws that exist. Wolf?
Mary Snow, thanks very much. And joining us now, a very special guest, Dr. Bernice King, the daughter of the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Dr. King, thanks very much for coming in.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
If your dad were alive today and saw what was going on as far as the Zimmerman trial was concerned and the not guilty verdict, what do you think he would say?
Well, I think the first thing he would make an appeal to everyone, because my father had an incredible ability to understand the range of human emotions on both sides of an issue. And so his first thing would be to make an appeal to all people to not let this further divide us, that we should not drink from a cup of bitterness and anger and hate in this moment. This should be an opportunity for us to really look at this racial issue that continues to haunt us, that continues to face us as a nation. I do think that he would probably feel a little bit of a disappointment in the verdict in this situation.
Just a little bit?
Well, you know, he would feel disappointed. I'll say it that way. But again, I think he would focus, because he was a leader, he was a nonviolent leader. And his main focus in everything that he did was about keeping people grounded in that.
Do you think he would take any specific action as a result of the not guilty verdict? In other words, encourage people to go to the streets, to demonstrate peacefully, but to do things along those lines?
I think he would encourage people to do those things, but I think also what Attorney General Eric Holder and the Justice Department has done, he would encourage that as well. But more importantly, he would probably, in times like these, because we are 50 years later, and there has been some changes in America, although for a lot of African-American children, in particular black males, there has not been. And so he would look at this as an opportunity for us as a nation to really sit down and have dialogue and discourse, and the kind of discourse that doesn't rise to the level of hostility, because oftentimes when we get to these very difficult places, it gets very hostile and very emotional. And unfortunately, you know, hate cannot put out hate. Only love can do that. And so we have to figure out how to have these discussions out of a heart of love, knowing that it's a very difficult discussion, because over and over again, African-American boys in particular get the short end of the stick in our justice system.
You were there when Eric Holder, the Attorney General of the United States, spoke out today on the Zimmerman trial and the verdict. Do you have confidence that Eric Holder, as Attorney General, will do the right thing?
I have confidence that he will certainly do his best. I do. But for me, I think this is a call for all of us. I mean, our president has spoken, the Justice Department is doing their part, but at the end of the day, presidents come and go, attorney generals come and go, but we as a people still remain, and we are the ones that are going to have to really engage in these discussions in our local communities.
The Trayvon Martin family attorney, Benjamin Crump, tweeted that, he said you tweeted him that this was, in his words, or maybe your words, the defining moment for the status of my father's dream. He quoted you as tweeting that, the defining moment for the status of my father's dream. I wonder if you'd explain what you meant by that.
I said a defining moment because we're in the 50th anniversary year of his I Have a Dream speech. And depending on how we handle this is going to determine how much progress we've made. If we ignore what has happened, because regardless of whether the rule of law is spoken, the jury has spoken, people have very heartfelt feelings about what has taken place. And some people do perceive this as a racial issue, and rightfully so. And if we just kind of brush it under the rug, spend a week on it, and move on, then we've done a disservice to his dream, because we are not at a post-racial society. We're not at a place where people are judging us by the content of our character, not the color of our skin. And so I think it's defining, and also in that vein, but also in whether or not we will have decent and in order dialogue and discussion to really look at what we need to do to prevent these kind of things and even change some of these laws. But more importantly, this is a time where we must understand our role and responsibilities of citizens to be more vigilant.
Dr. Bernice King, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And up next, what may be ahead for George Zimmerman based on what other high-profile defendants went through after their acquittals. Plus, why the NTSB's getting rid of an intern and a TV station may be in some serious legal trouble, all because of what happened after the Ashiana crash.